Lloyd Barrus, from devout Mormon to domestic abuser and anti-government extremist. In a chilling tale of domestic abuse, religious disillusionment, and violent extremism, Lloyd Barrus, a former Mormon missionary from Idaho, transformed from a seemingly devout family man into a dangerous figure whose actions led to a trail of destruction, including the death of a Montana. His story, marked by abuse, manipulation, and indoctrination of his sons, culminated in a deadly 2017 shootout that shocked the nation. Drawing from accounts in American newspapers and other sources, this detailed retelling explores Barrus' descent and its devastating consequences for his family and community. A devout beginning turned dark. Lloyd Barrus was once a model member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, widely known as the Mormon Church. As a young man, he served as a missionary, dedicating 6 months to spreading the faith. His devotion and charm attracted Tracy, a fellow Mormon, whom he met at a church in Idaho. The couple married in a sacred Mormon temple ceremony, sealed for eternity, and settled into what appeared to be an idyllic life. Lloyd worked in construction, providing for Tracy and their 2 sons, Marshall and Jeffrey, while Tracy managed the home. However, the family's peaceful life unraveled as Lloyd's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He began disappearing for secretive meetings, refusing to pay taxes, and harboring a deep resentment toward government authority. Tracy later described their home as a hell of violence. Lloyd's abuse was both physical and psychological. He raped Tracy if she failed to meet his demands and once held an unloaded gun to her temple, pulling the trigger to terrorize her. "When I heard the click, I realized the gun wasn't loaded," Tracy recounted. Fearing for her life, she made the agonizing decision to divorce Lloyd, despite her religious convictions. The divorce agreement stipulated shared custody of Marshall and Jeffrey, but Lloyd betrayed this trust. While Tracy left the boys with a neighbor for a weekend to cope with her stress, Lloyd kidnapped them, fleeing hundreds of miles to Washington. This act marked the beginning of his efforts to isolate and indoctrinate his sons, setting the stage for their later involvement in his violent ideology. A second marriage and continued abuse. While Tracy fought through legal channels to regain custody, Lloyd met Deborah Del Bosque, a recently divorced mother of 2, at a Mormon church. Deborah described Lloyd as a nice guy with whom she shared good chemistry. The 2 quickly married and relocated to Alaska, where they had 3 more children, forming a blended family. However, Lloyd's patterns of abuse resurfaced. He engaged in secretive meetings, refused to pay taxes, and vanished for days on what he called CIA missions. His behavior grew increasingly alarming, culminating in a shocking act of cruelty when he shot a neighbor's puppy in the head. Terrified for her safety and that of her children, Deborah decided to flee. With the help of a Mormon bishop who disguised himself to purchase plane tickets, she escaped Alaska with her 3 children, leaving Marshall and Jeffrey behind with their father. Alone with his sons, Lloyd intensified his efforts to mold them into extensions of his anti-government ideology. He kept them out of public schools, running them through gun drills and preaching about an impending war with the U.S. government. Tracy later said Lloyd turned the boys into monsters, conditioned to embrace his aberrant beliefs. A history of violence and confrontations with law enforcement. Lloyd Barrus' anti-government extremism led to multiple violent encounters with authorities. In March 2000, Lloyd, his son Jeffrey, and a woman were involved in an 18-hour armed standoff with police in Death Valley, California. The group exchanged gunfire with law enforcement, damaging a California Highway Patrol helicopter and forcing it to land. No one was injured, but the incident highlighted Lloyd's growing militancy. His son Jeffrey faced charges related to the event, marking the beginning of the family's entanglement with the criminal justice system. By 2017, Lloyd and his son Marshall were living in Montana, consumed by their shared hatred of law enforcement and government authority. Their extremist beliefs culminated in a deadly confrontation on May 16, 2017, when they embarked on what prosecutors described as a suicide mission. Driving a Chevy Suburban at 100 miles per hour, Lloyd deliberately provoked Broadwater County Sheriff's Deputy Mason Moore into a high-speed chase near Three Forks, Montana. Marshall, riding as a passenger, fired a shot that struck Moore in the face. After Moore's patrol car came to a stop, Lloyd turned the vehicle around, and Marshall fired additional rounds from a semi-automatic rifle, killing the deputy at close range. The chase continued for nearly 150 miles across Montana, ending in a shootout with law enforcement near Missoula. Marshall was killed in the firefight while Lloyd surrendered and was arrested. He faced charges including deliberate homicide by accountability, attempted deliberate homicide, assault on a peace officer, and unlawful possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. The trial and sentencing. Lloyd Barrus' trial in Butte, Montana, in September 2021 revealed the extent of his radicalization and its impact on his sons. Prosecutors played a recorded jail call in which Lloyd told his mother, "This is what Marshall and I have lived for. This is what he died for," underscoring their shared anti-government ideology. The prosecution argued that Lloyd and Marshall deliberately lured Deputy Moore into a chase to fulfill their violent agenda. The defense, however, claimed Lloyd had no intent to kill and was merely trying to protect his troubled son. They highlighted Lloyd's mental health issues, including diagnoses of delusional disorder and mixed personality disorder with antisocial and narcissistic features. Barrus believed he was either Jesus Christ or the Archangel Michael, according to psychiatrists. Despite these claims, District Judge Kathy Seeley ruled that Lloyd understood the criminality of his actions, rejecting the defense's argument that he should be committed to a state psychiatric hospital. In April 2022, Judge Seeley sentenced Lloyd Barrus, then 66, to 3 concurrent life sentences without parole for his role in Deputy Moore's death. During the sentencing, Moore's wife, Jody, described her husband's killing as an execution. Lloyd expressed remorse, saying, "I am truly sorry for the loss, the Moore family's loss," but added ambiguously, "I don't see how anybody could be more upset than I am for what happened here." A son's warning and a family's tragedy. Al Barrus, Lloyd's estranged son from his second marriage, spoke out after the 2017 shooting, warning of the dangers of domestic abuse and anti-government extremism. Al credited his mother, Deborah, for escaping Lloyd's violence in 1989 with the help of Anchorage police and a women's shelter. "I thank God every day for my mother's strength and courage," he said. However, Marshall and Jeffrey, left behind with their father, were not so fortunate. Al noted that Lloyd kept his brothers out of school, indoctrinating them with militia and white supremacist ideologies. Weeks before the Montana shooting, Al grew alarmed by Lloyd's online posts advocating violence against the state. He contacted Marshall, who claimed to be sober and working in construction, but soon relapsed under his father's influence. Al also reached out to Lloyd's former parole officer in California, expressing concern but was told nothing could be done since Lloyd had completed his parole. "We need to take the anti-government militia movement and white supremacy threat more seriously," Al urged, reflecting on the tragedy. Jeffrey Barrus, Lloyd's other son, also faced legal consequences for his father's influence. In 2000, he was charged in connection with the Death Valley incident, further illustrating the destructive impact of Lloyd's ideology on his children. The role of the Mormon Church. Lloyd Barrus' story intersects with broader issues involving the Mormon Church, particularly its handling of abuse cases. While Lloyd met both of his wives through the church, his actions deviated sharply from its teachings. His religious background provided a veneer of respectability that initially masked his abusive tendencies. However, the church's role in his story is limited compared to other high-profile cases involving Mormon members. For example, the church has faced criticism for discouraging clergy from reporting abuse confessed in religious contexts, as seen in the case of Chelsea Goodrich, whose father, a former Mormon bishop, was excommunicated but not prosecuted due to the church's actions. In Lloyd's case, the church indirectly facilitated his second marriage by providing the setting where he met Deborah. Additionally, a Mormon bishop aided Deborah's escape, highlighting the complex role of religious communities in addressing abuse. However, there is no evidence that the church directly covered up Lloyd's actions, unlike in other documented cases. A legacy of pain and a call for awareness. Lloyd Barrus' life is a stark reminder of how domestic abuse and extremist ideologies can intertwine, leaving a trail of broken lives. His manipulation of his sons, Marshall and Jeffrey, led them down a path of violence, culminating in Marshall's death and Jeffrey's incarceration. The murder of Deputy Mason Moore, a father of 3, devastated a community and underscored the dangers of unchecked extremism. Barrus, now living in Albuquerque, has sought to reclaim his narrative, emphasizing resilience and survival. "I've been ashamed of this my entire life, but now I don't have to be," he told Cobb 4. He encourages others who have endured similar trauma to shed their guilt and advocate for change. For the American public, Lloyd Barrus' case serves as a warning about the intersection of domestic violence, mental illness, and anti-government extremism. His ability to evade accountability for years, coupled with his influence over his sons, highlights the need for greater vigilance and intervention to prevent such tragedies. As Barrus stated, "We can prove to the world that we can go on and make it better."